day 13, and we're finally gonna learn how to be funny. Maybe. Before we start, I should say, I really did hesitate about whether to include any kind of joke-telling, comedy, funny element in this course. We've already covered the kind of Seinfeld approach to comedy and, boiling things down right to their most, zooming in and looking at them really at the smallest part. And I think that's a good lesson to bear in mind as we go through this. So this isn't going to be a massively long video, even though the email is absolutely 10 pages. It's a stonker. Because I think this makes sense more on its own just reading through it. I think that's the best way to get the ideas. But I do want to explain a few things as we go through. So the first thing is this, there's this idea here. Every joke you make has a but to every single joke. The one thing you really need to do before you make the joke is get clear on who the butt of your joke is. That's the way you make sure that you don't offend people or annoy people or, anger all your subscribers. When you're absolutely clear about who the butt of your joke is, you then know whether you can make that joke. Now, that's not a hard and fast rule or anything like that. And there's, comedy is such a, it's even a worse big ball of gooey greyness than email marketing is. But remember the idea of but. There is a but to every single joke. So before you make one, have a think about that and bear that in mind. It's a powerful weapon, humor, as I say, but if you use it wrongly, it can blow up in your face. I'm not responsible for you losing any clients or any offense taken by any gags you create as the result of using these words or these ideas. Okay, so use it wisely, have a think, but remember that there's a but to every single joke. So the main idea, the main way I add humor, and this might be frustrating, is what I call the humor pass. And you may remember when I talked about the 7 writing tips, one of the ideas I had was, you write, then edit. In a similar way, I don't add humor when I'm writing, when I'm in the brain dump phase, when I'm trying to get the idea across in my head. What I'm trying to do is just make that as clear and powerful as possible. So if I've got a lesson in my head or a takeaway, I come up with the story for that, I come up with the angle, I come up with the value, and maybe I add my call to action or my offer or whatever. So I get really clear on that first, the copywriting side of things. And then when I've done that, what I'll do is I'll pass through the email and just react to stuff. That's my favourite kind of humour, is like ad-libbing to other people's responses. So when I was a magician, that would be great. So somebody would say something at a table, I would react, we'd have a bit of banter. I'm pretty terrible at writing jokes or planning it out in advance, but if you say something, I'm pretty quick-witted. So this is my way. The humor pass is great if you're like me, good at ad-libs, spontaneously reacting, that kind of thing. Because you don't need another person to bounce off when you've got your own words. So I write my email, I get clear on the copywriting kind of stuff, I get my offer down, the lesson, the story, whatever I'm putting in, and then I read through it again and again. And it's this idea again. I read it out loud again, out loud. And I would just read it out loud and note when I think there could be something funny there. If I've got a funny response, I'll put it down and work on it later, but I'm just looking for opportunities. So I will put these triple X's in. I will put them everywhere in my work so I know what I'm looking out for. I know something should go there. I don't know what it is yet, but that's not going to stop me. I'm on a freight train. I'm just going. I'm going to put triple X in there. And I just keep going through it like that. So this is the humor pass, and you can see how it works in here. I'll give you some examples. That's awesome. But that is the main thing I do. And if you are that kind of quick-witted person and you're good at responding to people and you thrive on ad-libs and that kind of stuff, reading your own emails out loud is a great way to have that back and forth. You sound like a nutty to your family, but don't worry about that. The profitable emails, the funny emails you send will more than make up for that. So let's have a look at a few tools that I use. So a good one is exaggeration. And there's a few examples in here about this, so I'm not going to go too much on this, but you've seen exaggeration in sitcoms. So that's their best way of getting laughs. And like I say there, they take a normally stressful event like meeting your girlfriend's parents and then exaggerate every single element of it. And, the example there, meeting his girlfriend's mother, who turns out to be the lady he bumped into Aldi. They both reach for the last can of tomato soup, and then he flirted with her to get just so he could end up with a warm lunch. And then he meets her that evening. So it's not just meeting the girlfriend's parents, it's exaggerated then some. And you can go over the top with exaggeration, like here, or you can also go under the top with exaggeration as well. So exaggeration is something you can play with. It's an easy tool because pretty much anything, any boast, any claim, any feature, any benefit, anything like this can be exaggerated one way or another. So that's something, if you're looking for something to try and something to get used to, take one of your old emails and just look for stuff you can exaggerate and go, well, how would I exaggerate this? And then exaggerate it some more, and then some more, and then do it under exaggerated. So if you won £1 million in the lottery, you could say, it was quite a good day, that. Yeah. So that's the first thing, exaggeration. It's such a great tool to use. The next one is punbelievable. So puns. Now everybody hates puns, but they are a really good place to start. And to be honest, that's not even true. Not everybody hates puns, I think. Used sparingly, they are really useful. And they're a quick win. And even if it's a dad joke or a groan or something like that, it's still something different. And if you like puns, then a great way to do that is just look for words that have a different definition. So the comic store, for example, could be a comedian store. So it could be the comic store that sells Lenny Henry figurines or Jerry Seinfeld figurines. You thought it was a comic store, but it's actually a comic store. So just look for words that you can that have a double meaning as well, and then just play around with it. And again, it's this idea of, I'm not going to tell you which words to do or which ones not to do. You could find in any email you've ever written a whole bunch of pun opportunities. And it's not a case of using them all. It's just a case of trying this stuff out and getting your funny bone, your funny muscle, if that's not such a weird concept, toning your funny muscle so it's used to this kind of stuff, giving it a workout. And you can do that with, exaggeration, by taking any situation, just exaggerating it, even if you're never going to use it, and spotting words that have a double meaning and trying to shape them into a pun. Now, related to puns are the idea of similes. So they're very difficult to get across, and I'm not a master of this, but I think I've come up with a way to make it a little bit easier. So here's a few examples. So if you're trying to get across the fact that let's use that. So he's slower than a drug post office worker who just pulled an all-nighter. So if you're trying to say something is slow, then an easy way to go about it is to just come up with a whole list of things that are slow. So in this one, if something's smelly, running a marathon, heat wave, sewage farm, and see if you can just add those things together in a way that makes sense and flows. And this, again, is another example where reading your stuff out loud really pays dividends, because you'll know when you've added too much. So, for example, she smells like she's just run a marathon in a heat wave through a sewage farm. That's okay. I think if I added something else in there, with a skunk on her back, for example, if I did that, I think that would sound a bit too wordy and wouldn't have the right rhythm and sense of flow. So again, with all these, read them out loud. It'll just help you get a better sense of flow or rhythm. You don't need a kind of formula for this. You'll just know. But that's a really good way of having a go with similes. The next one is the rule of three. This is another really easy one. When you've got a list of items, the rule of three is common everywhere, and there's, a few examples there. It's just got beginning, middle, and end. It's just got a really nice rhythm to it. A really easy win is to, when you're listing three things, like this course is faster, easier, and better than any others out there, is to take the third one and just change direction completely. And, there we have offices in all major cities: Munich, Tokyo, Flitwick. Just silly, and it's not really that hard. This is probably the only template I'm actually going to give you when it comes to humour, but it's something you can try. So if you're talking about your course being this, this, and this, have a look. See if you can make the third option something absolutely bizarre and weird. Just completely change direction. That's a really quick humour win. And here you can see the kind of humour pass in action as I give you some examples. I'm not really going to talk through that because I've just kind of explained it here, and I think this is probably one of those cases where just reading it will give you a better example, better insight into how my mind works. Whether that's a good thing or not is probably not a good thing. But yeah, And if you want to dive deep into this, I don't want to make this about finding the funny. It really is a case of just going through the motions, you know, having a go at exaggerating stuff, coming up with puns, thinking about similes, and just getting into the habit of writing rules of three and going through your work, reading it out loud and noticing the areas where you think, oh, I'd say something to that. Or, oh, that's crying out for a gag there. You'll spot this kind of stuff when you read it out loud. But if you want to know more, there's a good link to a book. Sally Holloway's book is really good. There's loads of exercises in there that you can use, and it's just really cheap on Amazon. So here's one of the best things you can do today. All these are really simple. You don't need to be a comedian to access exaggeration, puns, similes, any of these. So just grab some of your old writing. And I say there, pick one of the tools, but you could pick a whole bunch of them. The first thing I would do is grab one of your old emails and read it out loud. Just see, without doing anything else, if you spot any potential for humour or not. Don't worry if you don't, or don't worry if you only spot, one gap. It's not a competition. This is one of the reasons I don't have like a Facebook group for this. I just kind of want you to do this on your own and just get a feel for it, what's comfortable for you. But grab one of your old emails or social posts, just read it out loud and see if you can spot any potential gags. And use the same technique I do with the kind of triple X. You don't have to come up with an award-winning gag straight away. Just put an X in there or triple X or something. And then see what your mind comes up with. Just pay attention to this kind of stuff. Take the pressure off you. And then when you've done that, just get into the habit of doing it. And take a couple of these, like exaggeration, writing puns, simile, rules of three. Just get into the habit of looking for those kind of things and thinking what you would do. So if you spot a word that has a double meaning, how do you make that into a pun? So in this example, we had, the comic store selling Barry Allen figurines at a flash sale because he's the Flash. It's a pun. It's not hilarious, but it just gets your comedy muscles working a little bit. So just have a look at these. Go with the humour pass thing. Just see what kind of stuff you come up with. Put the triple X in there when you notice things, and see if any of these would work. If you put a triple X and you think, actually, this would be perfect for an exaggeration, try an over-exaggeration. Try an under-exaggeration. Try turning it into a simile. And again, keep reading it aloud to make sure it makes sense. I'll do the humour pass like a whole bunch of times. I'll read it through again and again and again, because when you add a joke, you kind of change the tone, or maybe not the tone, but like the rhythm of the whole email. Because when you're adding comedy into an email, you're adding something. So it changes the rhythm a little bit, changes the dynamic. So you always want to, I'm going to put that in bold, you always want to keep reading it aloud just to make sure that it makes sense. Because that's why we're doing this. That's why we're writing these emails, is to win people over and get them to take action. We want them to be effective. Funny is a tool that we're using, and here's some examples of how to do that. So crack on with that, have a go, read through your emails, see if you can spot moments for humour, and have a bash at having a go with all of these and see what you come up with.